Hey guys, tonight we find ourselves brushing past low-hanging vines in a vineyard you didn't mean to wander into. The air is thick, with a strange sticky sweetness like overripe figs left too long on the windowsill of a sun-drunk poet. Somewhere in the distance, someone is laughing. No something is laughing. And it hasn't stopped for hours. The laughter loops, echoing through the twisted trunks of old grapevines, swelling and shrinking like a tide. It isn't threatening exactly, but it's not threatening either. You squint through the purpling dusk, shoes crunching softly over uneven earth, and think, I didn't plan for this. Which, as it happens, is exactly the energy of the god we're about to meet. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from a cave in Crete, or your grandmother's wine cellar, tell me where you are and what time it is. I read them all. I might even be watching you from a bush. Just kidding, sort of. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push past a final curtain of leaves and find the vineyard isn't just overgrown, it's thriving in a way that borders on defiant. The grapes shimmer like small moons, clustered in tight, plump constellations. The trellises creak with the weight of abundance. And sprawled beneath the central vine, half wrapped in leopard skin, is a man laughing so hard he can't breathe. He has leaves in his hair, wine on his chin, and one sandal off tied loosely around his wrist, like he forgot what feet were for. His face is flushed, his eyes bright with tears of laughter. Every now and then, he tries to sit up, fails, and cackles harder. Welcome to Dionysus' latest misadventure. You're not sure whether to say something or wait for him to recover. It's awkward, but he doesn't notice you right away. He's too busy wheezing at a nearby turtle who seems to be crawling in slow circles around a spilled goblet of ambrosia. The turtle looks tired, possibly drunk. Eventually, Dionysus wipes his eyes on the corner of his toga and spots you. Ah, he exclaims, as though you're an old friend or a late-arriving party guest. Just in time for the best part. If I could only remember what the best part was. He pats the grass beside him, offering you a seat on a cushion of moss that may or may not be alive. You sit, because let's be honest, refusing a god's invitation is not how you survive an evening in mythological Greece. Also, your legs are tired. There's something unplaceably ancient about Dionysus, even though he looks like someone who might be banned from a wine tasting for bringing fireworks. His laugh is contagious in a way that unspools your tension, one giggle loop at a time. And yet, there's something odd in the air, like the whole vineyard is watching. Dionysus reaches into a basket that appears out of nowhere and pulls out 2 grapes the size of plums. Snack, he offers. You nod, take one, and immediately regret everything. The grape tastes like poetry and heartache and somebody else's dream about summer. It's not unpleasant, just disorienting. Like you've skipped 4 hours of your life and gained a secret you don't remember learning. Careful, Dionysus says, already halfway through his second one. These came from the vines that remember everything. They'll show you something eventually, or maybe never, hard to say. Historians still argue whether the ancient Greeks truly believed their gods walked among them in disguise, or whether the stories were just elaborate metaphors for chaos, nature, and wine hangovers. But, sitting here, blinking at a grape that might hold memories, you start to think metaphors were probably real, and possibly drunk. You lean back on your elbows and stare up at the moon, which seems to be wearing a faint smile. Dionysus follows your gaze and chuckles. You ever try talking to her? He asks. Terrible listener. Beautiful eyebrows, though. Somewhere in the underbrush, a satyr snorts in his sleep. A bottle rolls gently across the moss. You swear you see a fig tree wink at you. The laughter starts again low at first, then rising, rippling outward like sound waves, from a divine joke with no punchline. It wraps around you. It warms your chest. You realize the god hasn't stopped laughing for hours, or maybe days, and somehow you're starting to laugh too. You wake with grape skins in your hair, and a vague suspicion that a turtle tried to steal your sock. Dionysus is still beside you, now attempting to use a vine as a makeshift belt, even though his tunic is already half off, and seems content to stay that way. His one remaining sandal dangles from a fig branch above his head like its chosen early retirement. Fashion, he mutters as he tightens the vine. You can't teach it, but you can drink until it doesn't matter. Oh. You sit up and find the grass beneath you has woven itself into soft, irregular patterns as if the ground had dreams last night and is still thinking them through. Your legs are sticky. Your hands smell like crushed berries and incense. And off in the distance, somewhere behind a wall of ivy, something is playing a flute made of bone. Not creepy at all. Dionysus stretches, yawns like a cat in the sun, and launches into a rambling tale about sandals, or possibly about frogs. It's hard to tell. There's a lot of hand-waving, and at one point he dramatically accuses a grape of betrayal. You nod like you understand, because interrupting a god in mid-theatrics is rarely wise. It turns out Dionysus has a complicated relationship with footwear. Sandals, in particular, seem to be his eternal adversary. He once tripped over his own ankle wraps during a festival in Naxos and fell headfirst into a ceremonial cake, which caused a minor uprising among the dessert priests. That's a real thing, dessert priests. Look it up, or don't. You'll sleep better not knowing how sacred custard became. Historians still argue whether Dionysus ever had a formal wardrobier if his chaotic fashion was just part of the vibe. Fringe scholars point to surviving art that shows him in leopard skins, ivy crowns, or stark naked with a look that says, "I meant to do that." You glance around and see that none of the vines in this vineyard follow any logical rows. They twist and curve like lazy rivers, some looping into heart shapes, others creating archways that shimmer faintly in the light. You try walking through one and nearly trip over an amphora, half buried in the ground, its top sealed with beeswax. Dionysus catches your elbow with surprising grace. "Careful," he says. "That one's cursed, or blessed. It's very unclear." You ask him, gently, what exactly he was doing here in the first place. He snorts, which is not the dignified sound you expect from a deity. "Got bored," he says. "Thought I'd find a quiet vineyard to nap in. Woke up in this one. Never seen it before. Pretty sure it didn't exist yesterday." He leans in close. "Vineyards appear when I need them. It's one of the perks. Like frequent flyer miles, but with more hallucinations." A breeze carries the scent of crushed herbs, mint, thyme, maybe something more ancient. Your stomach gurgles softly. Dionysus hears it and pulls a small bundle from beneath his toga. It's wrapped in fig leaves and smells suspiciously like honey and mischief. Inside are tiny pastries shaped like animalsians, bears, frogs, even a shrimp. You bite into a frog and discover it's filled with wine-soaked dates. Your teeth sink into centuries of forgotten recipe lore. Somewhere, a Roman baker is probably weeping with pride. Dionysus smiles at you, his teeth stained faintly purple. Mortals always want their gods to be wise or terrifying. They never imagine we might just be tired or lost or in desperate need of a snack. You chew thoughtfully and ask if he's really lost. He pauses. His smile flickers. Technically, no, he says, because technically you can't be lost if you're exactly where you're meant to be, even if you don't know where that is. You blink at him. He blinks back. You both blink several more times. Then he bursts out laughing again, so violently he knocks over the amphora you just tripped on. It pops open with a soft hiss. A greenish vapour escapes and coils upward like a lazy snake. It smells like old theatre curtains and scandal. Dionysus fans it away. Oops, he says. That one was fermenting regret. Best to let it air out. You lie back on the grass and watch the clouds twist into strange symbols. One looks like a dolphin, another like a man with 7 noses. You briefly wonder if you're dreaming, Gore, if the grape you ate earlier is just now kicking in. Dionysus hums a tune that makes the vines sway in rhythm. He tells you the vineyard sings, if you know how to listen. Not with ears, exactly, with elbows, or possibly spleens. Scholars aren't sure. You smile at the absurdity, or maybe because it all makes a strange kind of sense. You're not sure when the last time you checked the time was, or whether time even works here. But you know one thing. You don't feel like leaving. Not yet. Not while the laughter's still warm in the leaves, and the god of wine and wanderings keeps sharing his strange, sticky pastries like your old friends who just forgot each other's names. You're not sure how long you've been lying in the vineyard now. The sun doesn't seem to move much either, stuck, or just politely dawdling to keep the moment going. Dionysus is now balancing a pomegranate on his head, very seriously explaining to a beetle why it deserves its own holiday. The Scarab Festival, he proclaims. Music, dancing, free figs for all. The beetle scuttles away unimpressed, and Dionysus shrugs. You can't win them all. You sit up and wipe a leaf off your face. The ground has become even softer, like memory foam, but more judgmental. A group of satyrs nearby is attempting to build what might be a hammock or a giant slingshot, it's hard to tell. One is wearing your missing sock on his tail. Dionysus grins. You ever throw a party so wild that no one even notices it's not a party anymore? That's kind of my thing. He stretches, rolling his shoulders like a cat, about to pounce, and gestures at the world around you with a flourish. No plan, no destination, just vibes and wine. I'm the only god who got tenure without turning anyone into a tree. You raise a skeptical eyebrow. He smirks. Okay, well, that one time doesn't count. That guy wanted to be bark. Mainstream myth says Dionysus was one of the few Olympians born of a mortal woman, Semele, who was incinerated when she made Zeus show his true form. Dionysus was sewn into Zeus's thigh to survive. You try not to picture it. Thigh birth, Dionysus says, catching your thought. Super inconvenient, but the recovery snacks were amazing. He strolls ahead, and you follow, ducking beneath twisted grapevines that seem to part just for him. The landscape shifts subtly, the deeper you go bushes blooming with flowers that definitely shouldn't grow on vines, and stones arranged in spirals that pulse faintly with warmth. This vineyard is not normal. It's not even pretending. At one point, you pass a fig tree shaped like a harp. It hums faintly as the wind brushes its leaves, playing the kind of tune you'd hear in a dream you once forgot. A lizard with a gold earring bobs its head at you from a nearby rock. You nod back. People think I'm just the god of wine, Dionysus says suddenly. But that's only because they stopped listening after the third glass. He crouches beside a bush heavy with glittering berries and picks one. I'm the god of too much, of feelings that don't fit in jars, of joy so sharp it stings, and grief that makes you laugh because otherwise you'll explode. He tosses the berry into his mouth and chews thoughtfully. Wine is just the metaphor. The real party is what happens when your mask falls off and you realize you like your own face. It's startlingly philosophical for someone currently wearing a necklace made of pretzels. But that's Dionysus, part chaos, part truth bomb, all performed barefoot in a vineyard with poor cell service. You pause at a crossroads between two rows of vine zone glowing faintly blue, the other whispering in a language you don't know but feel you should. Dionysus points toward the blue path. That one leads to a pond that only reflects who you used to be, good for nostalgia, terrible for navigation. He points to the other. That one argues with your footsteps. You pick neither, which seems to amuse him greatly. Excellent choice, he says. We'll keep walking forward until sideways feels like a better idea. Somewhere behind you, a satyr sneezes and falls over. A chorus of giggles ripples through the vines. You reach a small hillock covered in moss that smells like oregano and campfire stories. Dionysus flops down, arms spread wide. Want to hear how I accidentally invented mosh pits? You nod cautiously. So there I was, he begins, trying to blend in at a mortal wedding feast. I show up with a jug the size of a donkey and a head full of questionable advice. The music's playing, people are politely clapping, and I think this could use more goat horns and wild spinning. He pauses dramatically. 3 minutes later, the groom's in a fountain, the bride is crowd surfing, and I'm being chased by an angry aunt wielding a breadstick like a sword. You laugh, despite yourself. He beams. Point is, he adds, you don't need a plan to have a great story. You just need to be awake when something ridiculous starts happening. Historians still debate whether Dionysus ever had a real temple of his own, or if every patch of chaos he touched simply became sacred by default. Fringe archaeologists claim to have found party remnants buried under modern city clay goblets, grape seeds, bones with tiny flutes carved into them. Others argue those were just trash heaps, possibly both. People say Apollo brought structure, Athena brought reason. Dionysus muses. But me? I brought the part of the story where everyone forgets their lines and still finds the ending anyway. He plucks a blade of grass and offers it to a passing snail. The snail ignores him. You sit quietly, the laughter distant for now, replaced by the softer, dreamier buzz of bees drunk on nectar. The vineyard sighs, and the god of no plan stretches into the sunlight like he owns it. And for now, maybe he does. Dionysus is humming again. It's not a tune you recognize, at least not from this century, but there's something eerily catchy about it. You find yourself swaying, just a little, as the notes settle into your bones like forgotten lullabies. The vines respond, curling upward in lazy spirals. Even the bees buzz in rhythm. Maps are for mortals, Dionysus mutters, as he plucks a grape and squints at it like it owes him money. And I haven't been mortal in a very long time. He eats the grape whole, seeds and all, then stretches until his back pops like a row of olives underfoot. You follow him as he begins to meander, again not marching, not wandering, but something in between, like the path unfolds simply because he expects it to. Somewhere along the way, a golden coin falls from the sky and lands in your palm. It's warm. Dionysus glances back and shrugs. Don't spend that. It's metaphorical. You tuck it into your pocket anyway, just in case. The further you walk, the weirder the vineyard becomes. Grapevines hang from clouds. Wine drips upward into bottles. A bird lands on a nearby branch and sings the chorus of a pop song that hasn't been written yet. Dionysus snorts. Too catchy, he mutters. It'll be overplayed by next week. You ask how he got here specifically. In this vineyard that possibly appeared just for him, with no clear boundaries and questionable physics. He stops walking and scratches his chin. I'd say I meant to, he begins, but that would be a lie wrapped in a toga. Truth is, I took a left turn after Thrace, got distracted by a singing spring, and woke up on a bed of crushed olives. He frowns. Or maybe that was last week, or next week. Time's slippery when you're me. You nod like that makes sense. Weirdly, it kind of does. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was a late addition to the Greek pantheon or a much older god absorbed into Greek culture from Thracian or even Near Eastern roots. His followers certainly thought he predated Olympus, more primal, more mysterious. He didn't conquer his way into the myths. He danced in. Dionysus scratches at his ivy crown, which now appears to be sprouting tiny flowers. You know, he says, sometimes I think I'm not even a god. Just a feeling people had when their knees went weak from too much joy, sadness. Same thing, really. You open your mouth to reply, but he's already pointing ahead. There, he says, that's where it gets weird. Which, frankly, feels like a strange statement coming from a man whose belt is now a live snake doing jazz hands. Still, you follow. Up ahead, the vineyard opens into a strange clearing. The soil sparkles faintly, and the air tastes like lemon zest and whispered secrets. A small tree in the centre leans lazily to one side, burdened with heavy, plum-coloured fruit that drips juice without being touched. Dionysus approaches it like it's an old friend. Meet the vineyard that shouldn't exist, he says. No one planted it. No one tends it. It just appears. Sometimes where there's grief, sometimes where there's joy so big, it cracks something open. He picks one of the fruit and offers it to you. You hesitate. He rolls his eyes. Relax. It won't kill you. Probably. You take a bite. It's sweet, yes, but also salty, and somehow smoky. A story unfolds on your tongue, not in words, but in memories. Someone else's memories. You see a girl dancing barefoot on a hillside. A man weeping into a carved mask. A feast that ends in silence and spilled wine. What is this? You whisper. Fruit of the stage, Dionysus says. Every performance leaves a mark. Some become legends, some become juice. That's when you notice the trellises around you are arranged like theatre seating rows of vines curving inward toward a stage of packed earth. The fruit-bearing tree sits in the centre, like the heart of a forgotten amphitheatre. The god spreads his arms theatrically. This is where I come to forget what I know and remember what I feel. You sit on a root that acts like a cushion. The vines around you begin to hum, faintly at first, then louder, in a harmony you can't follow but deeply recognize. A curtain of mist descends across the clearing, and from it emerges a figure in a golden mask. You tense a but Dionysus grins. Don't worry, that's just the vine spirit. Very dramatic, but harmless. The masked figure performs a wordless pantomime joy. Sorrow, fear, love all bleeding together like watercolours in the rain. When the performance ends, the figure bows to Dionysus and melts back into the vines. Bravo, he whispers. Then louder, don't quit your day job, spirit. You lean back, dizzy with emotion. Or maybe grape sugar, or both. The vineyard around you hums contentedly. Fringe scholars sometimes argue that Dionysus wasn't just a god of wine and madness, but of transformation the moment something becomes something else. Water into wine, sorrow into laughter, mortal into myth. As you lie there, full of fruit and feelings, you think, maybe I'm transforming too. Or maybe you're just really, really tipsy on ancient grape lore. Either way, you close your eyes and listen to the vines whisper your name. When you open your eyes, the sky is lavender, not just the colour the actual herb. It's wafting overhead in fragrant clouds, drifting through the air like sleepy perfume. You blink and sit up slowly, only to find a goat standing on your chest. It blinks at you. You blink back. Then it sneezes directly in your face and trots off with the smugness of someone who's just solved a very personal riddle. You wipe your cheek and look over at Dionysus, who's sitting cross-legged in the grass, braiding flowers into a crown for a nearby rock. That goat, he says without looking up, has a PhD in Latin, very opinionated, doesn't like Cicero. You nod solemnly. Of course, illiterate goat. Name's Thales, he adds, but only if you pronounce it wrong. The vineyard around you has grown stranger. The grapes now glow faintly, some hover. You swear you see one unpeel itself and disappear in a puff of rime. Satyrs drift by on what look like wine barrels converted into scooters. One of them offers you a high five. You miss. Don't take it personally, Dionysus says, slipping the flower crown onto the rock. They're allergic to continuity. You stand up and follow him again, your legs a little wobbly from the wine or the weirdness, maybe both. The vines shift as you pass, almost like they're listening. At one point, one vine reaches out and gently tries to hold your hand. You let it briefly. It feels like being hugged by a nervous plant. Vines here are emotional, Dionysus explains. We had a long talk about boundaries last century. Didn't stick. As you walk, he tells you a story. It's about a mortal who once tried to codify every type of grapevine in the world. The man travelled from Thrace to Sicily, noting textures, colours, tastes. When he arrived in this vineyard, he tried to name the grapes only, to find that each one whispered back its own name, refused to be categorized, and occasionally changed flavour out of spite. Legend says he left barefoot, muttering about existential fruit. Historians still debate whether ancient vineyards like this were metaphorical places, invoked in ritual, dream, or poetic transia, whether they existed momentarily in the waking world for those touched by divine madness. The answer, as with most things Dionysian, is probably yes. You pass a table now, made entirely of corks, set with a feast that seems half finished and half remembered. Cups filled with starlight, olives floating in what might be moon water, a plate of cheese humming gently in D minor. Don't touch that one, Dionysus says. It sings at inconvenient moments, embarrassing in public. You resist the urge to poke it and move on. Eventually, the vines thin, and you come to a low wall made of stacked amphorae. Dionysus hops up onto one and balances easily, arms outstretched like a child on a log. From this vantage point, you see the vineyard stretches further than you'd imagined, sprawling over hills, across valleys, folding in on itself like a drunken labyrinth. No two rows are the same. Some swirl, some climb trees. One appears to be doing yoga. He jumps down and lands beside you with a soft thud. Mortals always want directions, he says, but not all places work like that. Some places you arrive at by accident, or by breakdown, or by wine? You glance at him. Mostly wine, he admits. Fringe philosophers occasionally suggest that Dionysus represents not chaos but release, the shedding of roles, the moment you laugh at a funeral. The second you realize the plan has unraveled, and instead of panicking, you start singing. Planning is fine, he muses, until it becomes a prison. You don't know if he's talking to you, or the vines, or the goat, who has returned and is now reading a scroll upside down. But the words settle into your chest like something true. You arrive at a grove of ivy-choked columns. Some stand tall, others have collapsed into mossy reclining positions, like they're napping off an emotional brunch. The air here is cooler, tinged with mint and smoke. Dionysus touches one of the fallen columns gently. This used to be a stage, he says. Not for plays, for moments. Laughter, tears, people yelling about love, or bread, or both. He looks wistful. It's where the vineyard first laughed. You raise an eyebrow. Yes, he says. Vineyards can laugh, but only once. After that, they just remember. He plucks a grape from a low-hanging cluster and offers it to you. This one pulses gently in your palm. You eat it without thinking. Memories burst behind your ice a thunderstorm, a broken lyre, a song sung too loudly in a cave. You laugh, or cry, or hiccup. You're not sure. That's the good stuff, Dionysus grins. You sit on a soft patch of moss, and he flops beside you, arms behind his head, staring up at the lavender sky, which now seems to be raining the faintest flakes of sugar. Funny, he murmurs, how getting lost always leads somewhere. You close your eyes, dizzy but grounded, and feel the vineyard breathing all around you lush, eternal, gently bonkers. And, just for a moment, you feel entirely okay. You don't remember falling asleep, but you wake with a grape in your mouth and a snake coiled gently around your arm like a sleepy bracelet. It blinks at you, then yawns a slow, pink flick of tongue and slithers off into the underbrush, humming something that sounds suspiciously like an ancient lullaby. Dionysus is crouched a few feet away, peering into a picnic basket. His expression is one of theatrical concern. This one was supposed to have cheese, he mutters. Instead, it's got snakes. You blink at him, then at the basket. Sure enough, several small snakes are curled up inside, wearing what appear to be flower crowns and tiny bow ties. One of them hisses politely, another seems to wink. Maenads must have packed this, Dionysus sighs. They're always adding flair. The Maenads, you remember vaguely, were his followers' women, who roamed wild, danced under moonlight, tore apart wild animals, sometimes, and reportedly entered states of ecstatic frenzy. Whether they were a real cult or an exaggerated myth is still debated by scholars. Some say they symbolized female liberation. Others say they just really liked yelling. Dionysus plucks one of the flower-crowned snakes from the basket and places it on his shoulder. It immediately curls into his hair like a very fashionable barret. He gestures for you to follow. Come on, he says. They're expecting us. Who's they, you ask. He winks. Depends on the mood. Oh. You follow him through another series of vineyard paths, though by now they're less like rows and more like spontaneous suggestions of direction. Vines part for you. Grapes sigh as you pass. You could swear one of them whispers your name in an accusatory tone. You ignore it. Ahead is a clearing, pulsing with the low thump of drums. A ring of Maenads twirl and stomp, their bare feet kicking up soft clouds of wine-coloured dust. They wear ivy garlands, torn fabrics, and expressions of joyful menace. One holds a tambourine that glows faintly. Another is using a Thessusa fennel stalk, topped with a pine conias, a conductor's baton for the breeze. Dionysus grins. They've been rehearsing. This might get loud. The Maenads notice you and cheer as if you've just arrived to officiate a celestial wedding. One tosses you a goblet of something thick and golden. You drink instinctively. It tastes like thunder and honey. Your ears ring pleasantly. They won't hurt you, Dionysus says. Probably. One Maenad approaches and presses a wreath onto your head. It tightens briefly, then settles like a warm thought. She nods, satisfied, and returns to her spinning. You ask if this is a ritual, or just Tuesday. Yes, Dionysus says. Historians still debate whether Maenadic rituals were actual events or theatrical exaggeration accounts, describe trance-like dances, mystic communion with nature, and occasionally dismemberment, though that may be metaphorical. Fringe scholars claim such frenzies were a form of spiritual release, especially for women bound by strict social norms. Sometimes, Dionysus says, mortals need to lose themselves to find the thread. That's what the frenzy is for. Ode, you take a seat on a rock that promptly reshapes itself into a cushion. The snake on his shoulder hisses appreciatively at your choice. Dionysus reclines beside you, hands behind his head, Maenads dancing in concentric circles around him like a living kaleidoscope. This is the best part of being lost, he says, the part where you stop trying to be found. A Maenad screams joyfully. Another cackles while balancing a jug on her head. A third seems to be arguing with a nearby fig tree. The tree appears to be winning. You ask if this ever ends. Dionysus chuckles. Everything ends, but sometimes it just loops first. He waves a hand, and the Maenads pivot no dancing backward, their movements rewinding like a play performed in reverse. One laughs so hard she falls over, rolls, and lands perfectly in a seated pose with a grape between her teeth. Time is flexible here, Dionysus adds. Like dough or logic. The snake curls back into his hair and naps. A satyr wanders into the clearing with a set of pipes, begins to play a tune so ancient it makes your bones ache. The Maenads pause, bow, and vanish into the vines like smoke. The drums fade. The tambourine glows once more, then quietly dissolves. Silence. You sit, heart pounding, unsure what just happened. Dionysus yawns. Well, he says, that was either art or a warning. Maybe both. You ask him how often this happens. Too often, he grins, but never enough. Oh. He leans over and brushes a speck of dust off your shoulder. You did well. Some mortals panic the first time. Try to name everything. You didn't. You ask what would have happened if you had. Probably turned into a tree, he shrugs, but a nice one. You laugh. He laughs harder. The vineyard joins in. Somewhere nearby, a fig drops from a branch and explodes into petals. You lean back against the reshaped rock, breath slowing, the laughter and madness of the Maenads still echoing faintly in your chest. The vines settle again. Even the snakes seem content. And deep in the earth you feel it. The vineyard is remembering you now. You're still trying to process what just happened with the flower-crowned snakes and the reverse-dancing Maenads, when Dionysus claps his hands and announces, "Time to talk to the vines." You assume he's yoking. He is not. He leads you down a narrow, winding path that grows steeper with every step. The air thickens not unpleasantly, but like warm honey poured over everything. Each breath smells of old wine and something fainter, crushed time, wet stone, and perhaps the scent of a memory you've forgotten on purpose. Here, he says, stopping before a massive, twisted grapevine that arches into a perfect circle. The wood is ancient, blackened, gnarled, pulsing faintly with reddish veins beneath its bark. Grapes hang from it like sleeping bats. You reach out to touch one. Dionysus gently stops you. Not yet. Let it speak first. You raise an eyebrow. It's polite, he adds. And then the vine begins to rustle. Not in the usual way. It doesn't sway in the breezite, doesn't even acknowledge the wind. Instead, it shivers, like a creature waking from a long, complicated dream. The leaves shimmer. The grapes brighten. A low, melodic vibration fills the air knot. A sound exactly, but a pressure behind your eyes, like remembering a name from a dream. This vine, Dionysus whispers, remembers stories. Oh? You watch as the bark peels back ever so slightly, revealing faint patterns in the wood beneath. They're not letters, not quite, but shapes. Symbols. A spiral that becomes a fish, a tear that becomes a flame, a mask that slowly splits in two. You step closer and realize the symbols are moving. It tells the stories, Dionysus explains, of everyone who's passed through here. Mortals, gods, satyrs, even that goat who got banned from the symposium for eating the scrolls. He nods to the vine. Go ahead, tell it something. You hesitate. What would you even say to a vine? Hi? Nice bark? But something inside you, some ancient instinct, guides your hand to the closest leaf. You press your palm flat and think not of facts, but of feelings. The moment you got lost. The moment you laughed when you should have cried. The moment you realized you didn't want to go home yet. The vine pulses under your hand. Then, without warning, it shifts. A new pattern carves itself gently into the bark, something abstract, but unmistakably yours. The sensation is both soothing and unsettling, like hearing your own voice on an old tape recorder. Dionysus smiles. Now it knows you. You step back. The vine settles. The vibration fades. Careful, he says. It doesn't forget. Historians still argue whether ancient Greek myths about talking plants were metaphorical, ritual-based, or just early attempts at explaining wine-induced hallucinations. But fringe scholars maintain that certain groves specially, those sacred to Dionysus, were said to record events in the twisting patterns of their bark. Some even claim to have found song vines that respond to sound or light with changing shapes. Dionysus sighs contentedly and stretches. It's exhausting, being remembered all the time. That's why I like it here. This place doesn't care who I am. It just records. No judgment. He plucks a grape from a nearby branchone that pulses faintly blue and bites into it with a dramatic crunch. You ask what that one remembers. 3 breakups, 1 revolution, and a goat wedding, he replies. Mostly the goat wedding. You laugh, and the vine near you responds with a faint shimmer of light. It's oddly comforting. A bird lands on Dionysus's shoulder and chirps a few notes of what might be an old sea shanty. He nods appreciatively, tosses it a seed, and returns to the path. Come on, he says. There's a spot up ahead where the grapes tell secrets. You follow, of course, because what else are you supposed to do when the god of wine, chaos, and deeply confused goats invites you to a vine that gossips? The path narrows again, lined now with shorter vines, squat and twitchy. Their grapes are smaller, darker, and seem to hum faintly. Dionysus whispers to one. It twitches and emits a single, delighted snort. You try one. Instantly, a memory not your own floods your mind, a priest faking visions for free olives, a satyr falling in love with his own reflection, a mortal who accidentally summoned a muse by singing in the bath. The grape you ate just tattled on the entire pantheon. Secrets, Dionysus confirms. They ferment well. You sit beneath one of the gossipy vines, dazed and delighted. Dionysus lies down beside you, head resting on a pillow of ivy. The earth thrums. Somewhere nearby, someone is humming again. Everything has a story, he murmurs. Even silence, even leaves, especially grapes. You don't respond, because the vineyard is starting to feel like it's reading you now. And for once, you're okay with that. The gossip grapes are giggling. At first, you think it's the wind, but then one of them lets out a full-bodied snort and rattles on the vine. Another emits a tiny hiccup. A third drops to the ground and rolls in slow, delighted spirals before dissolving into a puff of sparkling mist that smells like embarrassment and licorice. Careful what you share near them, Dionysus warns. They'll retell it, usually out of context. You eye the vines warily. One of them seems to be whispering the phrase "the fig incident" on repeat, but refuses to explain further. You suspect it involves a satyr, a ladder, and something that was never meant to ferment. Dionysus flops into a pile of fallen leaves, arms spread wide. This whole place is basically one big emotional archive. Most temples record victories. This vineyard records the weird stuff. Which, if we're honest, is what actually matters. Oh, you sit down beside him, brushing stray bits of grapeskin from your sleeve. A nearby vine snakes around your foot, then shyly retreats like a cat, unsure if it likes you yet. You ever notice, Dionysus muses, that mortals always want their stories to end clean, like a moral is the same thing as closure? You nod slowly. He grins. No such thing here. This vineyard, it remembers the messy middles, the awkward pauses, the punchlines that never landed, the laughs you try to stifle in serious moments. He tosses a grape in the air and catches it with his mouth. Chews thoughtfully. That one tasted like a wedding toast, gone terribly wrong. You both laugh. Historians still puzzle over Dionysus's dual nature, joyful and terrifying, celebratory and chaotic. Some describe him as a liberator of souls. Others see him as the god of divine madness. But all agree he doesn't fit into boxes. His rituals were wild not because they lacked meaning, but because meaning couldn't always be explained in a straight line. Dionysus sits up suddenly and points. There it is, the leopard skin. You follow his gaze. Draped across a low-hanging branch, fluttering faintly in the breeze, is a length of golden spotted fabric. It gleams like old sunlight and seems to shimmer just beyond the laws of fabric physics. That, he says reverently, has seen more weddings, feasts, and identity crises than I care to count. You approach the garment. The moment your fingers touch it, memories surge not yours, not even clearly someone's, but fragments. A hand reaching across a table, a roaring crowd, a whispered apology shouted too late, laughter, tears, wine spilled over papyrus scrolls. It's not magical, Dionysus says. It's just worn in. Like the universe put all its drama in one piece of fabric and said, "You hold this." You drape it over your shoulders. It's warm, not just temperature warm, but emotion warm, like being hugged by the best and worst parts of your own memory. Looks good on you, Dionysus says. Very tragic hero meets off-duty muse. You sit back down, leopard skin still draped across your back, and ask him how he keeps track of it, all the madness, the laughter, the weirdness. I don't, he says simply. I just let it wash over me, like wine or bad advice. He pulls a corked bottle from nowhere and offers it to you. Want to try something ancient? You nod. The bottle uncorks itself with a sigh. The liquid inside is not quite wine. It's thicker, darker, with the texture of melted velvet and the scent of something remembered during a thunderstorm. You sip. Immediately, you're elsewhere. A different vineyard, different century. You see people dancing, a flute playing, a god laughing under a sky that flickers between dusk and dawn. You see yourself, too not as you are, but as someone you might have been, or might still become. Then it's gone. You exhale and pass the bottle back. What was that? Vintage 483, Dionysus says. Year of the endless laughter. You raise an eyebrow. No, really, he insists. The whole year. Laughter. Wouldn't stop. Terrible for farming. Great for poetry. You lie back and watch the sky again. It's darker now, but glittering with stars that seem unusually nosy. One blinks twice when you meet its gaze. You blink back out of courtesy. Dionysus hums a tune that makes the grapes quiver in time. A nearby vine attempts to harmonize, but loses the rhythm halfway and apologizes by dropping a single raisin into your lap. You're not sure what time it is, or if time even happens here the same way, but you feel full not just of food and wine and celestial gossip, but of presence, like the moment is sitting next to you, holding your hand and refusing to rush. Fringe theologians once argued that Dionysus wasn't a god at all, but a state of being, a temporary possession by joy, chaos, grief, and unfiltered life. That he didn't arrive, they emerged, whenever mortals cracked open the part of themselves that wasn't trying to perform. Dionysus leans his head back and yawns. Getting sleepy, are we? You nod. He smirks. Don't worry. The vineyard won't let anything in that doesn't belong here. You close your eyes. The gossip grapes giggle one last time, and the vines sigh content to remember you a little longer. When you wake, the sky has changed again. It's not lavender anymore, it's a deep indigo, threaded with faint gold veins like cracked porcelain. The stars are closer now, not metaphorically closer, but actually some hanging just above the vines like someone forgot to hang them higher. You sit up slowly. There's a fig leaf in your mouth. Dionysus is perched on a wine barrel, wearing the leopard skin like a cape. His feet dangle, and he's blowing bubbles into a goblet with the concentration of a child inventing new planets. Morning, he says, though it's clearly not. Did you dream of anything embarrassing? You consider lying. He grins. Excellent. That means the vines like you. The vineyard around you has rearranged itself again. The paths are different. Some vines now grow in zigzags. A cluster of grapes is levitating. A group of satyrs drifts past on hammocks suspended between mobile trellises. One waves and yells something that sounds like, "Don't trust the pears." You wave back. Dionysus yawns dramatically. You know, he says, people think being a god means control, but really it's just watching chaos bloom in weird, beautiful shapes. He hops down and starts walking, motioning for you to follow. This way. There's a place I want to show you. It's old, even for me. You trail behind him as he weaves through the vines, humming a tune that keeps changing key. At one point, he plucks a grape and holds it to his ear. Nope, he says, tossing it. That one's just angry. The path leads you to a sunken grove ringed with carved stones. In the centre, a marble basin filled with a dark liquid that doesn't reflect your face, only your regrets. You lean over and see flashes, the conversation you avoided, the moment you stayed silent. That one time you left early and missed something important. You look up, a little rattled. Dionysus watches you without judgment. This, he says, is the basin of almosts. You whisper, "Why would anyone want to see this?" He shrugs. Sometimes you have to look back to forgive yourself forward. You sit beside the basin and let the visions drift away. The liquid calms. The vines around the grove sway slowly, like they're breathing. Historians still argue whether the Dionysian mysteries, the ancient secret rites performed in his honor, were just symbolic theatre, or if they involved real trance, vision, and emotional unburdening. There are whispers of rituals in caves, in groves, where initiates wept, laughed, screamed, and emerged changed. Dionysus plucks a petal from a vine and lets it flutter into the basin. "Most people don't understand," he says softly. "They think I'm about escape, about forgetting, but I'm not." "Oh," he turns to you, expression gentler than before. "I'm about feeling, all of it, even the parts that hurt." A wind stirs, leaves rustle. Somewhere far away, a satyr sneezes dramatically. You ask if he ever feels overwhelmed. He smiles. "Every day. That's why I laugh so hard." You both sit in silence for a while. The kind of silence that doesn't feel awkward, the kind that lets you breathe a little deeper. Eventually, he stands and stretches. "All right, time to visit the library." End. You blink. "There's a library?" Egg greens. "Of course, even Chaos keeps records." You follow him up a slope lined with grapevines, whose leaves shimmer like polished copper. At the top, nestled in a circle of ancient oaks, is what can only be described as a grapevine cathedral walls made of interwoven vines, leaves forming shelves, books growing like fruit from branches. You step inside and stare in awe. Each book is bound in something alive leather that breathes, paper that hums faintly. The spines are labelled in languages you've never seen. One shelf contains nothing but scrolls labelled "Unsent Letters." Another is full of volumes titled "Almost Said." A satyr librarian in tiny spectacles gestures for silence. Dionysus waves cheerfully. "This," he whispers, "is the archive of intoxicated truths." He pulls a book from the shelf. It opens itself and begins to read aloud, not with a voice, but with images. You see someone you once loved, a field you forgot existed, a version of yourself who was louder, braver, messier. You swallow hard. Dionysus places a hand on your shoulder. "Wine uncorks the soul," he says. "This place just bottles it." Fringe scholars have long speculated that the Dionysian rites weren't about losing control, but removing filters allowing buried truth to surface, sometimes painfully, often joyfully. The evidence is inconclusive, but the feeling lingers in ancient texts and half-forgotten songs. You walk through the archive slowly, touching the spines, listening to the murmurs. One vine offers you a book. The cover simply says, "You if you had stayed." You don't open it. Instead, you place it back gently, and it nods. Dionysus watches you, approving. Some truths aren't ready, some never will be. Outside, the sky has turned wine red. You step out of the archive and feel the vineyard settle again. You don't know how long you've been here, or how much farther there is to go, but for the first time in a while, the not knowing feels like part of the point. Dionysus stretches and sighs. Ready to laugh again? You nod, and the vines begin to smile. Laughter starts as a low rustle in the vines. It builds slowly first, like a breeze teasing dry leaves, then rising into something bigger, richer, the kind of laughter that feels ancient, the kind that knows what it's laughing at, and doesn't care if you don't. Dionysus is already chuckling, before you even realize why. You glance around the vineyard, trying to see the joke, and finally spot it. A turtle, the same one from your first night here, has somehow climbed a grapevine and is currently doing a very slow, very determined dance. It spins in slow-motion circles on a broad leaf, swaying with the grace of an elderly sorcerer at a wedding. That turtle, Dionysus wheezes, has better rhythm than half the mortals I've ever met. You try to suppress a giggle. You fail. The laughter bursts out of you genuine, unstoppable, from some deep pocket inside your chest. Dionysus throws his arms out like he's conducting an orchestra of absurdity. All it takes, he says between wheezes, is one ridiculous turtle and suddenly life makes sense again. The grapes around you seem to glow brighter in response. A few vines do a little shimmy. Somewhere nearby, a fig tree claps politely. Dionysus plops onto a sun-warmed rock, still grinning. This, he says, is why I laugh. He throws you a grapeone that sparkles faintly, and you catch it instinctively. The moment you bite into it, memories flood back. Not your own. Or maybe they are, just reshuffled. A memory of being 10 and slipping in the rain, of shouting at the moon because it wouldn't answer, of dancing alone in a field at dusk. Every time I laugh, Dionysus says softly, I release a little bit of that. He doesn't need to explain what that means. You already know. Grief, longing, embarrassment, regret. All the sticky stuff mortals carry, but rarely name. He points to the sky, which is now streaked with colours that don't have names. I don't laugh because life is easy. I laugh because it's too much. Because if I didn't, I'd crack open and let all the nonsense pour out the wrong end. He throws a rock that turns into a butterfly mid-air. You pretend not to be surprised. Historians still can't agree on whether Dionysus was a god of liberation or chaos. But the line between those two things, very, very thin, a wine glass's edge, a grape's skin, a turtle's foot slipping on a leaf. He leans back, arms spread wide. You ever notice how laughter and crying are the same muscle group? You nod. He sighs, content. Exactly. A satyr strolls past, carrying an enormous goblet on his head like a crown. Behind him, two maenads are attempting to teach a goat how to bow. The goat refuses. You root for the goat. You ask Dionysus if he ever gets tired of eat-off being the symbol, the festival, the punchline. He's quiet for a while. Then, yes and no. Sometimes I want to be taken seriously. Then I remember being serious is just another mask, and I've already got enough of those. He pulls a mask from his belt, a plain clay one, painted half in joy, half in tears. He tosses it to you. Try it. You slip it on. Suddenly, the vineyard changes. It's louder, yes, but also clearer. The vines hum like tuning forks. The air pulses with unspoken truths. You can feel people, real people, whose laughter echoes across time. A child pretending to be a horse, an old man telling a joke at his own wake, a woman laughing just before her life changes forever. You remove the mask, blinking. Dionysus nods. It doesn't hide you. It reveals what you feel when you think no one's watching. He takes it back, gently, and places it atop a stone pillar that immediately sprouts a single red rose. Fringe archaeologists once uncovered shrines with two faces of Dionysus, one smiling, one weeping. The debate continues: was he a god of opposites, or simply a god of everything? Maybe both, maybe neither. Maybe he's just the feeling you get when everything collapses and you laugh anyway. You lie back again, the earth warm beneath you, and let the vineyard's rhythm settle into your bones. Dionysus begins humming again, softer this time, as if singing to the soil. You ask what the song is. It's a lullaby, he says, for the vines, for the laughter, for the part of you that still thinks you're lost. And as the stars blink sleepily above, the vines sway with the wind, and the goat finally bows, albeit sarcastically, you realize something. You're not lost anymore. You're here, exactly where you're supposed to be. Dionysus is now lying on his back in a puddle of grape juice, using his own arm as a pillow and arguing with a dandelion. I'm just saying, he tells it seriously, if the sun didn't want to be flirted with, it wouldn't shine so confidently. You glance at the dandelion. It seems unmoved. He sighs dramatically and waves you over. Come, witness my defeat at the hands of photosynthesis. You sit beside him, and he offers you a fig. You decline, remembering what happened last time. He shrugs and eats it in one bite, seeds and all. Around you, the vineyard hums with drowsy contentment. The vines curl a little slower now. The air is thick with the scent of warm fruit and old stories. Even the satyrs have taken a break-home naps with a thyrsus for a pillow. Another snores with half a grape still in his mouth. Tell me something, Dionysus says, eyes half closed. Why do mortals always run from stillness? You don't answer immediately. You don't have to. He isn't really asking for one. They fill their calendars, he continues, chase things, build towers, just to jump off them again. They fear being alone with themselves. So they drown the silence with noise. And when that doesn't work, he lifts his goblet, they come looking for me. You think about that, about silence, about how loud it can get when everything else stops. I don't blame them, he adds, softer now. Stillness is loud, but it's also where you meet yourself. Oh, a bird chirps above, then mutters something suspiciously like a complaint. Dionysus throws a grape at it. Historians still debate whether Dionysus was originally a god of foreign origin, perhaps from Phrygia or Lydia, absorbed into the Greek pantheon with all his wildness intact. But one thing is clear, he represented something the other gods didn't. Not war, not wisdom, not justice, disruption. Not to destroy but to reveal. You ask Dionysus what he sees in mortals. He grins. Potential, and really bad decisions. You laugh. He sits up, brushing leaves from his shoulder. You've lasted longer here than most, he says. Most mortals come, sip the wine, panic at the vines, and vanish in a puff of ego. You stayed. You shrug. I didn't know how to leave. Exactly, he says. That's the secret. The vines nearby whisper something. Dionysus tilts his head. They say you've earned a glimpse of the root cellar. You're instantly suspicious. What's the root cellar? He smiles. Only the most ancient part of the vineyard, where the vines started, where things grow that shouldn't, where laughter was born. You follow him, of course, because what else would you do now? He leads you through a narrow passage framed by twisting branches. The ground grows softer, richer. You descend gently, like slipping into a dream, until the air cools and the light fades. At last, you reach a door. Not a grand door, just a simple wooden one, carved with spirals, and dotted with knots. Dionysus knocks. A moment passes. Then the door swings open, not mechanically, but like it's thinking about it and decides, sure, why not? You enter. The cellar is alive. Roots dangle from the ceiling, pulsing faintly. Clusters of grapes glow dimly in the dark. There's a deep humming, like the earth itself is purring. In the centre is a large bowl carved from black stone, filled with wine so dark it seems to absorb the light. Dionysus gestures. This is the first pour. You ask what it does. It doesn't show you the future, he says, or the past. It shows you the moment you became yourself. You hesitate. Then step forward and look in. The surface shifts. Images emerge blurred at first, then clearer. You see yourself laughing. Not at something funny, but at something painful. Laughing anyway. Choosing joy over shame. Choosing to stay. Choosing to feel. You blink, and it's gone. The wine is still again. That, Dionysus says, is your root. He doesn't say more. He doesn't need to. You walk slowly back through the cellar, your own heartbeat echoing somewhere in the roots above. Historians still argue whether the Dionysian mysteries were designed to entertain or to transform, whether the wine was a beverage or a boundary breaker, whether the god himself was divine or just an immortal metaphor. But in the root cellar, none of that matters, because the laughter you heard, it wasn't Dionysus. It was yours, and it was real. You emerge from the root cellar feeling like you've left part of yourself behind, or maybe gathered something you didn't know was missing. Dionysus stretches in the sunlight like a cat who just remembered he's sacred and decides not to care. Welcome back, he says, tossing you a grape. This one's striped like a sunset and hums faintly. You put it in your pocket, just in case. The vineyard has shifted again. The colours are different, softer, like everything's been exhaled. Even the vines seem calmer. They no longer twitch or murmur. They sway gently, sleepily, as if the whole vineyard is finally content. You ever notice, Dionysus says, how laughter makes everything weigh less? You nod. The air does feel lighter, the world a little less sharp around the edges. He gestures forward, and you walk again. The path is narrower now. Each step feels deliberate, like the vines are making space for you, one leaf at a time. You pass a tree carved with hundreds of faces. Each one is laughing, not posed or staggered genuine, surprised, delighted. Some with eyes closed, some with tears, all frozen in that fleeting second before composure returns. Those are the laughers, Dionysus says. Every soul who's ever truly surrendered to joy leaves a mark. You pause before one face that looks uncannily familiar. You can't quite place it, maybe a distant relative, or someone you once loved for a summer and forgot to miss. The vine behind it sways gently, as if to say, you remember more than you think. Fringe scholars believe some sacred sites in ancient Greece were designed not to honour gods, but to capture emotion, laughter, grief, ecstasy. The physical stones were meant to resonate with memories, like emotional tuning forks, places you didn't just visit, but felt. You walk in silence for a while. The path curves around a small ponder puddle, really shaped like a crescent moon. The water reflects not your face, but your laughter. You watch yourself giggling at something unseen. It's disorienting and oddly touching. Dionysus kneels and dips his hand into the water. The surface doesn't ripple, it shimmers. Most gods demand worship, he says, but I just want to be remembered in a good story. You ask if he's afraid of being forgotten. He looks surprised. Me? Number I'm stitched into every toast, every dance, every badly timed joke. I'm the whisper at the bottom of a wine bottle, and the scream at the top of a mountain. You forget my name, sure, but not me. You watch him closely now. He doesn't look quite the same. He's less boyish, more ancient. There are fine lines at the corners of his eyes. His laughter carries weight. Truth is, he continues, I'm not a person, I'm a moment, and moments can live forever if you let them. You sit beside him. The silence between you is easy. A breeze carries the scent of time and old pages. Somewhere nearby, a satyr is humming off-key. The vines lean closer, curious but not intrusive. Then, suddenly, rustle. A large book flutters out from the vines and lands at your feet. It opens to a page filled with ink, sketches your steps through the vineyard, the grapes you tasted, the fig you avoided, the mask you wore. It's your story, written in grape juice and giggles. You pick it up and turn the pages slowly. Some parts you recognize, others feel like dreams. One page is blank except for the words, to be laughed at later. You close the book gently. The vines wrap around it, absorbing it like they've been doing this forever. They archive everything, Dionysus says, even your best exit lines. You both lie back on the grass, staring up at a sky now painted with twilight. The stars begin to hum, low and steady. Not music, exactly just presence. Ever wonder why laughter makes mortals cry sometimes? Dionysus asks. You nod. It's because laughter lives right next to truth. You brush up against it, and your eyes leak. He closes his own eyes. The grass wraps around him like a blanket. You ask if the vineyard is always here. It shows up, he murmurs, when someone needs it, when the world gets too sharp, when the soul needs to stretch and remember how to wobble. You laugh softly. He grins with his eyes still closed. Exactly. You lie there until the sky forgets what colour it was supposed to be. The vines hum lullabies. And you don't say goodbye, because this place doesn't require it. You wake up to find a satyr brushing your hair with a pine cone. Gently, respectfully, singing what might be the ancient Greek version of a barbershop quartet, minus 3 singers. Dionysus is sipping from a goblet shaped like a snail and pretending not to notice. Good morning, honoured guest, the satyr says, bowing so deeply he nearly topples over. Your leaves were tangled. You touch your head. Sure enough, your hair is woven with ivy, petals, and one extremely opinionated grape still whispering about last night's dream. Dionysus waves the satyr off with a smile. He's practicing to be a priest. Long story, don't ask. You sit up slowly, blinking at the soft golden haze all around you. Everything is bathed in a kind of honey light, as though the sun has decided to set very slowly and wants everyone to notice. Even the shadows feel lazy. You glance down and realize that the grass has shaped itself into a soft spiral beneath you, like a nest or a fingerprint. You don't remember lying down in it, but the vineyard remembers you. Today, Dionysus says, you meet the archivist. You blink. There's an archivist? He nods solemnly. Of course. What do you think keeps all these stories from getting mixed up? Someone's got to file the goat weddings and accidental prophecies. He begins walking without waiting. You follow. The path is smoother now, as if it's been travelled often. Tall vines rise on either side like walls, but they're loose, leafy, full of breath. Every so often you catch a glimpse through them. A satyr writing with a grape stem, a maenad tying a love note to a leaf, a turtle wearing a scroll as a hat. Eventually, You arrive at a circular clearing. At the centre is a being neither god nor mortal, not quite solid, not quite smoke. Cloaked in pages made of pressed petals, their face shifting constantly through expressions. Joy, sorrow, curiosity, and the unmistakable look of someone who's just remembered a very funny secret. This, Dionysus says, is the archivist. They don't speak much, but they know everything. The archivist nods at you and beckons. You step forward. They reach into their robe and produce a book. Your book. But now it's thicker, more pages, some glowing faintly, others smudged with grape stains and laughter marks. They hand it to you. You flip through, scanning pages as sensations flood back, the dancing maenads, the sarcastic turtle, the thorny vines that held your hand, the first pour, the root cellar, that fig you didn't trust. Every moment is preserved, but not frozen. The pages seem alive, humming softly, shifting with your breath. You look at Dionysus. He shrugs. It's yours now. That's how it works. You came in with questions. You'll leave with stories. You run your fingers over the cover. The title has appeared, The Time You Got Lost and Laughed. You ask if you're allowed to take it. The archivist raises an eyebrow. Then, with the air of someone about to bend a rule just this once, they nod. Historians still wonder if ancient rituals truly created memory object symbols imbued with experience. Some say wine-soaked scrolls buried in graves were meant to remind the dead of joy. Others claim those stories lived in the people, not the parchment. Dionysus leans against a fig tree that smells faintly of cinnamon. Most mortals think laughter is an escape, but it's a return to the self, to the centre, to the part of you that existed before shame taught you silence. You let those words settle in. The archivist steps forward again and places a tiny slip of vine paper in your palm. It simply says, "You may return when ready." You tuck it into the book. The moment you do, the clearing brightens and the vines around you shiver with what can only be described as approval. A grape nearby pops softly like a cork. The archivist fades back into the greenery, pages fluttering, as if caught in a wind only they can feel. Dionysus claps you on the back. "Congratulations," he says. "You've been filed." You laugh, and the vines laugh with you. You walk back together, no rush now, no path to chase. Just grape-scented air, golden light, and the comfortable silence of people who don't need to fill every space with words. You pass a new section of the Vineyard you haven't seen before. The grapes here are tiny, no bigger than raindrops. Dionysus plucks one and hands it to you. "This one's for endings," he says. "Bittersweet, but good for the heart." You taste it. It's small, soft, and perfect. And just like that, you understand. The story doesn't have to be over. It just has to rest. You carry your book beneath one arm now, the title still glowing faintly. The Time You Got Lost and Laughed. It feels warmer than it should, almost like it's alive, breathing, waiting for more. Dionysus leads you down a new path, this one lined with silver-threaded vines that shimmer in the golden light. They whisper, not in words, but in question, small ones, quiet ones, things you've wondered but never said aloud. You try to ignore them. They giggle softly and keep asking. At the end of the path, you find a bench carved from figwood and draped in ivy. Dionysus gestures for you to sit. He stands beside a low marble table, where a single bottle rests dark, elegant, humming faintly with whatever secrets it contains. "This," he says, is the wine that remembers Troy. You blink. That Troy, the one with the horse, he nods, and the drama, and the bad decisions. You ask if it's real. He raises an eyebrow. What isn't? He uncorks it gently. The sound is more of a sigh than a pop. He pours 2 small glasses. The wine is deep purple with veins of gold. It glows slightly in the shade. Careful, he says. This one talks back. You sip. The moment it touches your tongue, you're elsewhere. A battlefield. But not the one from the epics. No armies, just a group of women tending a garden in the shadow of burnt walls. One of them laughs. Another weeps. Someone is planting pomegranate seeds. Then, the sea. A boy sings to the waves. He doesn't know the war is over. He just knows the tide hasn't answered yet. Finally, a poet-old nearly blind sits under a fig tree, telling a group of children a story he barely remembers. One child asks if the horse could sing. He says, "Maybe." You blink. The vineyard returns. Dionysus watches you closely. Good stories don't ask to be believed, he says. They ask to be felt. You nod slowly, the taste of the wine still blooming behind your teeth. Historians still argue whether the fall of Troy ever happened, whether it was a myth, a memory, or a metaphor. But in places like this vineyard where grapes ferment truth and fiction in equal measure, it doesn't matter. Dionysus downs his glass and sets it aside. Most people come here wanting answers, but the vineyard doesn't give answers. It gives echoes. He walks over to a nearby tree short, squat, covered in dark berries that shine like obsidian. These, he says, are memory berries. Each one holds something someone tried to forget. You pluck one, just hold it, it's heavy, you can feel the sadness inside. Dionysus watches you. You ask what happens if you eat it. Depends, he says. Some remember who they were, others remember who they could have been. You put it back. He nods approvingly. You don't need to carry what's not yours. A satyr strolls by, arms full of empty amphorae, whistling a song that sounds like it was invented 5 minutes ago. He winks at you. You wave. The amphorae hum in harmony as he passes. Dionysus walks beside you again as the path gently loops back toward the main grove. You notice new vines growing where you've stepped, tiny, green, and already laughing. You stop beside a small spring bubbling up between 2 stones. Dionysus dips his fingers in and flicks water onto your forehead. For clarity, he says. You do the same to him. For chaos. He grins. Finally, someone who gets it. Oh, fringe theologians have proposed that Dionysus wasn't just the god of wine and ecstasy, but the god of transitions, of thresholds, the space between what was and what will be, a god not of resolution, but of transformation. You feel that now, not just in your legs or your breath, or the golden book beneath your arm, but in your mind. Something subtle has shifted, not dramatically, not painfully, just realigned. You walk for a while in silence, breathing in the scent of crushed herbs and sun-warmed leaves. The vines around you murmur lullabies. Even the gossip grapes seem sleepy now. You reach a stone archway entwined with ivy. On it, someone, maybe Dionysus, maybe you, has written, "We were not lost. We were only elsewhere." Dionysus stops beside it. This is where some people choose to leave, he says. You glance past the arch. A soft path leads onward, vanishing into a haze of starlight and distant wind chimes. You look back at the vineyard. It hums gently, No pressure, no urgency, just invitation. You turn to Dionysus. What would you do? You ask. He thinks about it, then shrugs. I'd take one last laugh first. So you sit beside him, the stars blinking like slow applause above, and you both laugh. At what? At nothing. At everything. At how strange it is to be alive, and to feel, and to want answers, and to find instead a fig tree with opinions and a God who makes you carry your own sandals. You laugh until your ribs ache, until the vines sway in rhythm, until the vineyard joins in, and the night, impossibly, laughs with you. You sit beneath the archway for a while, fingers tracing the carved phrase, "We were not lost, we were only elsewhere." The words feel like moss on your tongue-soft, green, oddly nourishing. Dionysus sits cross-legged beside you, absent-mindedly braiding wild thyme into a crown for a passing beetle. The beetle accepts it with royal indifference and scuttles off into the underbrush, presumably to declare war or start a theatre company. You know, Dionysus says, this is usually the part where mortals ask if they can stay forever. You don't ask, but you think about it. He nods, anyway. You could. It's possible. The vines would be thrilled. They've already started composing a ballad about your hair. You run a hand through your hair reflexively. Sure enough, a tiny vine falls out. It hums softly and vanishes into the soil. But, Dionysus adds, that's not what this place is for. You tilt your head. This vineyard isn't a destination, he continues. It's a pause, a breath between thoughts, a dream between days. He picks a grape, rolls it between his fingers, and holds it to the starlight. You came here to remember that laughter and stillness can live in the same breath. Now that you remember, you're ready. The vines rustle gently, not in protest, but in approval. Historians still debate whether Dionysus's followers believed in literal resurrection through wine-fueled ritual, or whether the transformation was spiritual return to the self, scrubbed clean by joy and wildness. Either way, they always emerged changed. You glance at the path beyond the arch. It's no longer hazy, it's inviting. You can almost hear the real world on the other side. Footsteps on pavement, the clink of dishes, someone sighing through their morning coffee. Dionysus sees the look on your face and smiles. It's not so bad, he says. Out there, once you know where your laughter lives. He hands you something wrapped in fig leaves. For later, he says, when the noise gets loud. You unwrap it carefully. Inside is a single grape, pale gold, nearly translucent. You hold it up to your eye and see a tiny image inside you, smiling, laughing, caught mid-chaos. It glows faintly. Warm? Eat it when you forget how to wobble, Dionysus says. You tuck it into your pocket. You rise together one last time and walk the length of the path back to where you began. The satyrs bow dramatically. The maenads offer a toast in your honor, then promptly forget what they were toasting and start dancing again. The turtle raises a stubby leg and nods like a scholar. The vines part around you. The stars lean in, listening. You stand at the vineyard's edge now. Behind you, all the laughter you've shared, the stories etched in grapes, the fig tree that never fully trusted you. Ahead, everything else. Dionysus raises a hand. I won't say goodbye. That would imply endings. And you? You're in the middle of a very good sentence. You smile. Will I remember this? He considers. Not all of it, but the important parts will echo in dreams, in the scent of time, in the giggle that sneaks out when you spill coffee on your shirt. You step forward. The moment you cross the threshold, the vineyard sighs like a curtain closing after a long, beautiful play. The vines shimmer one last time, then vanish into morning light. You blink. You're home. But everything is softer, the walls less rigid, the air more fragrant. There's laughter stuck in your chest, waiting for the right moment. There's warmth in your pocket. You reach in and feel the fig leaf bundle, still glowing, still true. And somewhere, far off just at the edge of hearing the vineyard, laughs once more. You wake the next day with grape skins on your pillow and a faint whisper of ivy tangled in your hair. For a moment, you wonder if it was all a dream, but then you hear it, the softest hum, like a vine laughing beneath your bed, the kind of sound that doesn't beg to be noticed, only remembered. You sit up slowly, stretch, and check your pocket. The fig leaf bundle is still there. The golden grape is still glowing. A reminder, a keepsake, a whisper of something wild. You don't eat it. Not yet. Instead, you walk through your day like someone carrying a secret. Not a burden more, like a song stuck in your head that makes traffic bearable, that makes people's complaints sound oddly musical. You smile too much. People notice. Someone at work asks if you're on something. You shrug. Grapes. They laugh. They don't understand, but part of them smiles back anyway. At lunch, your spoon stirs your soup in slow, circular spirals. You watch the motion and think about the spiral path through the vineyard, the pond that reflected your laughter, the archivist's shifting face, Dionysus singing to the vines like they were children falling asleep. Historians say that Dionysus walked among mortals not to teach but to disrupt, to gently or wildly shake the illusion that life must be orderly, logical, sequential, that everything must make sense. How? They say his worshippers laughed too loudly, loved too freely, wept too openly. Maybe that's why the vineyards only appear to those who need to remember what it feels like to feel everything, without apology. In the afternoon, someone yells at you in the grocery store parking lot for no clear reason. You almost yell back, but then you remember a satyr tripping over his own tail and you snort, just once, quietly. The anger doesn't land. The grape in your pocket hums faintly. Later, as twilight washes the walls of your home in purples and golds, you sit by the window and write in a journal you haven't touched in years. You don't write facts, you write moments. A turtle on a leaf, a fig that refused to be trusted, a vine that remembered your laughter before you did. You don't write the god's name, you don't have to. You simply draw a spiral in the corner of the page. That night, you dream of a grapevine curling around a tree, whispering jokes to the stars. The stars chuckle. One winks at you. You wink back. You wake with a new kind of peace know, loud or grand, but sturdy, flexible. A joy that bends, not breaks. The kind that survives awkward phone calls, burned toast, and long elevator silences. You carry it with you. Not like armor, more like a vine around your wrist. Gentle, playful, alive. The days begin to ripple. Not in any dramatic fantasy novel kind of way. No thunderbolts, no satyrs crashing through your breakfast table. Just ripples. Little shifts in how things feel. You start noticing laughter more often not, just your own. The weary chuckle from your bus driver, the way a cashier sighs and laughs at a broken scanner, the boy on the corner who laughs at his own sneeze, like he surprised himself with the volume. Before, these sounds floated past you. Now, they land. You collect them like pebbles in your pocket. The fig leaf bundle is still there, safe and warm, but you don't open it. You could. There are days when you want to. Days when everything feels a little too sharp, when your inbox groans and your face itches with disappointment. But you don't. Not yet. Instead, you sit on the edge of your bed and close your eyes. You think of Dionysus trying to convince a leaf it was a philosopher. You think of the archivist's face, shifting like sunlight through wine. You think of the grapes that giggled and the vines that sighed when you left. Fringe philosophers have long insisted that myth doesn't leave you, not if it really lands. They say true stories don't sit in your brain, they root themselves under your ribs. They alter how you move, how you notice, how you choose what to ignore. They make mundane magic possible. You're different now, and the world responds, not in grand gestures, but in soft ones. A parking meter gives you 5 free minutes. You find time growing in a crack on your apartment steps. A note from someone you forgot arrives, saying, "I remembered that time you made me laugh when I wanted to cry." You smile, and the vines in your memory smile with you. One evening, a storm rolls in. Nothing dramatic, just slow thunder, big drops. The kind that makes the pavement hiss like it's releasing secrets. You step outside barefoot. You look up, and you laugh. No reason, no punchline, just because. The rain doesn't stop you. The thunder seems to nod. And in that moment, the air smells faintly of grapes, of fig, of Dionysus. You whisper, "Thank you," to no one and everyone. A breeze wraps around you like a shawl and moves on. Historians still can't agree what Dionysus really stood for: madness, joy, transformation, chaos. Maybe all of them, maybe none. But the ones who spent their lives in vineyards, the ones who danced until their feet bled and laughed until they wept, they never cared about definitions. They just knew he came when needed. You sip water from a chipped mug and pretend it's wine. You read books out loud just to hear the rhythm of your own voice. You burn toast and name it cursed ambrosia. You dance in the hallway without music, because it's not about staying in the vineyard forever. It's about carrying it. The fig leaf bundle waits patiently on your dresser. You see it every morning, every night, sometimes in dreams, hovering slightly above the ground like it's considering whether to sprout legs and go explore. You still haven't opened it, not because you're afraid, because you know you'll need it, really need Itome Day. And when that day comes, it will be ready. But not yet. Today, the sun slips through your curtains in long golden lines. The dust in the air catches the light, like sleeping vines stretching in their own kind of dance. You sit cross-legged on the floor with a notebook you haven't used in years. The cover is stained, the spine creaks. Inside, the pages are blank still, full of possibilities, still waiting to be part of something strange and honest. You draw a spiral in the top corner. You write, "The turtle was right. You don't explain." The words make sense to you. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you hear the chime of grapevines. Not literal sound, just memory sound. The kind that hums when you brush your teeth or stand in a long checkout line and suddenly remember how it felt to lie on a mossy hill with your laughter echoing into vines. The grape in your pocket hums once, softly. Still there, still glowing. Historians rarely agree on what happens to those touched by Dionysian vision. Some say they go mad, Others say they disappear. The wiser ones admit they just change. Quietly, subtly, forever. You feel the change most when things go sideways. When a conversation turns awkward. When plans fall apart. When something that used to make you feel small now makes you laugh and shrug. You've become a little less brittle, a little more bendy. The vines trained you well. One afternoon, you visit a real vineyard. Nothing magical, just a patch of earth, grapes, and sun. You wander through the rows slowly, breathing in the scent of dust and ripening fruit. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you hear it again, the Maenad singing off-key, the snoring satyrs, the whispering vines, and Dionysus arguing with a leaf about metaphysics. You laugh. The grapes tremble politely. You leave a note tucked under a vine. Thank you for the laughter. I'm keeping it safe. That night, you dream of the vineyard. But this time, it's growing through your apartment. Vines curl gently around the light switch. The fridge hums in iambic pentameter. The floor grows warm and mossy. You find Dionysus in the kitchen, humming to the kettle, balancing a grape on a spoon. Still wobbling? He asks. You nod. He winks. And just as you open your mouth to say something ridiculous, the dream fades like steam from a clay goblet. You wake, smiling. The fig leaf bundle still glows. You still haven't opened it, and you know now, truly, that the vineyard isn't a place you visit once. It's something that takes root inside you, a story you keep adding to, a joy you choose to carry, one vine at a time. The world is quieter now. You lie in your bed, eyes soft, muscles loosened, and somewhere deep inside your mind, the vineyard still breathes. You can feel it a steady rhythm, like the slow pulse of the earth, wrapping around your thoughts like warm ivy. The laughter has softened too. Not gone, just folded, tucked gently into your chest, a low hum beneath your heartbeat. There is no rush anymore. No maps. No urgent questions. Only stillness. And maybe, just maybe, the distant scent of grapes on the air. Let your breath slow now. Let your hands rest where they are, not needing to do, or fix, or hold anything. Let your thoughts wander gently back to the places that made you smile, Dionysus chasing turtles, vines singing secrets, stars blinking in on the joke. The vineyard doesn't need you to remember it all. It just wants you to remember how you felt. Ease into that now. The vines are still swaying. The Maenads are still dancing, somewhere. And the god of laughter is humming something old and silly and sacred. You're safe. You're exactly where you need to be. Close your eyes. Let the dream return when it's ready. And if it doesn't, that's all right too, because part of it is still with you. Part of it always will be. The next morning, you find yourself humming a tune you don't recognize. It's odd, familiar, but slanted, like a song half heard through a wall made of ivy and memory. You hum it anyway. The cat tilts its head. The toaster blinks its quiet approval. As you butter your toast lightly burnt, just the way no one recommends you realize your grape is still glowing faintly in your coat pocket. You didn't wear the coat yesterday, or the day before. But the grape moved with you anyway. Of course it did. You whisper, "Thanks for staying," and tuck it back in. It pulses once, as if to say, obviously. Outside, the sky is doing its best impression of a grapevine blue and streaked with gold, clouds curling like vines over the edge of morning. You walk to work, or maybe nowhere in particular. These days, walking has become its own reward. The air feels different, not cleaner just aware. A breeze nudges your collar, and you think you hear Dionysus laughing in the distance. Probably your imagination. Probably not. You pass a cafe. Someone spills their drink. They look horrified, but before they can curse, they laugh a real laugh. And for a moment, you see a flicker of vines in the reflection of the shop window. The vineyard peeks through now and then, always at the edges, always when you need reminding. Historians still argue whether Dionysus was born twice or simply arrived twice first through Zeus, and later through every burst of laughter that interrupted a solemn moment. Whether he walked through villages or simply whispered through glasses held too high. But those who've wandered too deep into poetry, or wine, or griefer, all three tend to agree. He finds you when your lines start to blur. You sit at a bench, with a view of nothing important. You pull out your notebook again, draw another spiral. This time you write. The punchline was never the point. You underline it twice. The person next to you sneezes, and then apologizes to a bird. You smile. That night, you light a candle. No reason. You sit in its glow, letting the shadows ripple on the wall. And somewhere between silence and sleep, you feel the vineyard stretch across the sky, wrapping stars in warm grape leaves, tucking the moon beneath a fig tree. And you think, yes, I remember now. The laughter wasn't about forgetting the world. It was about making room for it. You open the fig leaf bundle on a Thursday. Not because anything terrible happens. Not because you're overwhelmed or broken or longing for some dramatic revelation. You just wake up, stretch, look at your ceiling fan spinning like a slow thyrsus and think, today feels ready. You unwrap it slowly. Inside is the golden grape, still warm, still glowing, still humming with something ancient and ridiculous. You hold it in your palm. It's softer than before. Less like a fruit, more like a memory solidified into form. You take a breath and eat it. The flavour blooms immediately, sunlight on fig bark, laughter in the middle of an argument, spilled wine on a dusty floor, a turtle sneezing into a goblet. You don't chew, you feel. And when you swallow, something inside you unclenches. Not something you were aware of, but something that had been tight for years. The grape dissolves, and your breath comes easier. No revelations, no booming voice, just quiet. The kind of quiet that lives beneath the noise of everyday life, the kind you forget to listen for. And in that quiet, you hear the vineyard. Just for a moment, a vine rustling, a satyr snoring, a fig tree telling a joke in the distance, and yes, Dionysus, laughing in a way that sounds like he knows exactly when you'd open that grape, and exactly what it would do. Historians still question whether ancient rituals actually transformed the people who practiced them, or whether the transformation was imagined, encouraged by storytelling, music, fermented fruit. But modern souls quiet ones, wild ones know better. Change isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a fruit in your pocket. Sometimes it's laughter in a grocery store. Sometimes it's you, standing at a crosswalk, grinning for no reason at all. You move through your day with new softness, not fragility yield. You don't break as easily. You bend, you sway, you spiral. A colleague complains about something meaningless. You offer them a pastry. They pause, blink, laugh. They don't know why. You do. You walk home as the sun begins to sink, and the colours remind you of the vineyard at dusk grapes glowing, vines sighing, fig trees watching you like mischievous librarians. You whisper, "Thank you," to no one in particular, and the breeze answers not with words, just with warmth, just with presence. You step inside, set your keys down, and pull out your notebook. Today, you don't draw a spiral. You draw a fig leaf, and next to it, you write, "Laughter is the fruit we share when words fall asleep." Then you close the notebook and let the vines tuck you in. You wake before your alarm. No reason. Just that gentle kind of early, where your body decides it's done dreaming, but the world hasn't quite caught up. You lie there, staring at the ceiling, feeling your breath rise and fall like soft waves in a still sea. There's a quietness around you that feels familiar. It takes you a moment to realize the vineyard is back. Not literally, your walls haven't grown vines overnight, though the pothos on your bookshelf seems unusually smug. But something is here, in the way the light falls across your floor, in the way your pillow smells faintly of time. You stretch, pad to the kitchen, and find yourself reaching for grape juice instead of coffee. You drink it slowly. It tastes like morning, patience, and something that once happened under a fig tree. The grape you ate your little gold-shelled secrethers left no trace, except that everything feels softer. Not dulled, not numb, just less jagged. You step outside, and the city is already bustling, buzzing with its usual too-muchness. Horns, shoes, sirens, exhaust. You brace for it, but it doesn't hit as hard. You imagine Dionysus walking next to you, barefoot, sipping from a questionable goblet, pointing out absurdities with a delighted snort. "Look," he might say, "that man's yelling at a mailbox like it owes him money." You smile. Historians rarely mention Dionysus in the context of daily life. He's the god of festivals, rites, madness, but fringe thinkers insist his real work happens after the party. When you're washing wine glasses, when the silence returns, when the mask is off and the feelings remain, you cross the street. A bus honks and someone mutters something rude. You wave politely. The fig leaf in your notebook rustles. Later that day you find a message scribbled on the back of a receipt. You didn't write it, at least not recently, but the handwriting is yours. It reads, "Joy is not the absence of pain, it's what grows anyway." You fold the receipt and tuck it between the pages of your journal, right beside the spiral, the fig leaf, and a dried petal that definitely wasn't there before. That evening, your neighbour knocks on your door. She's crying. No explanation, just overwhelmed. You don't ask questions. You make her tea. You sit together in silence. Then, without meaning to, you say something small, silly. A ridiculous memory about a goat wearing a crown. She laughs. A real, wet, surprised laugh. And something shifts in the air. You both feel it. You sit a little taller. You offer her your notebook. She reads the page with the spiral, then the one with the fig leaf. She nods. No one says the word vineyard, but the air tastes like grapes and old laughter. And when she leaves, you could swear a single grape has appeared in your fruit, bowl gold tinted, humming faintly, waiting for someone else who needs to remember. The golden grape sits in your fruit bowl for 3 days. You don't touch it. You don't need to. It hums faintly, like a polite reminder, "I'm here if you need me. No rush." The other fruit give it space, as though they understand. Meanwhile, you keep moving through your days with that vineyard echo inside you. It doesn't announce itself. It's more like background music you didn't realize was playing until it stops. And then, oh, how you miss it. But it never really stops. It just softens. You find joy in smaller things now. You laugh when the wind flips your umbrella inside out. You chuckle when a bird lands on your table and stares at your sandwich like it's considering legal action. You smile at strangers without needing a reason. And sometimes only, sometimes you feel vines curling softly in the air around you. They're not visible, but they're there. Historians have long debated what role Dionysus played in personal healing. Some say he offered no wisdom at all, only escape. Others argue that his joy was the wisdom, that laughter, wine, and chaos were tools of transformation, not indulgence. The ones who've laughed through tears tend to agree with the second group. You begin carrying your notebook everywhere, not for journaling, just presence. You like knowing it's with you, like a passport to somewhere only you remember visiting. One afternoon, you sit at the park, flipping idly through the pages. A child runs past, drops a grape, and stares at it in horror. You pick it up, hold it out. "Worry not," you say. "The grape has forgiven you." The child giggles. The vines in your mind clap softly. At home, your phone rings. It's someone you haven't spoken to in years. They sound tired, heavy. You listen. Then you say, "Tell me the worst joke you know." They blink. You can hear them blinking. Then, "Why did the satyr refuse to date the nymph?" You wait. "Because he couldn't combine with her schedule." It's awful. It's perfect. You both laugh until the phone line crackles. Later that night, you light a candle. You don't know why, it just feels right. The flame flickers once, twice. You swear, for a heartbeat. It dances like a Maenad. You fall asleep with a book on your chest. When you wake, you find a fig leaf pressed between the pages. You didn't put it there, but you know exactly where it came from. Somewhere between dream and daylight, the vineyard passed through again. A gentle breeze, a snort of laughter in your sleep, a whisper of a goat quoting Latin. You breathe in and say, "Welcome back." The golden grape in your fruit bowl winks. You don't even question it anymore.